What's up, people? We've been having a great time doing these leveling up videos, and tonight we got another great one for you. This is a guy who literally changed the game of selling reptiles online. I think that all of you guys remember the old days of trying to sell a snake or a frog or a reptile online, and I don't even want to get into it. But John Lehmann of Morph Market came in and turned the whole industry upside down with a new way of selling reptiles online. I don't even want to waste your time with having you watch my dumb ass for the next 5 minutes. Here's my leveling up video with John Lehmann of Morph Market. All right, what's up, everybody? I have the brains behind Morph Market here. I got John Lehmann. What's up, John?
Hey.
How you doing over there?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. I don't see you on enough of these things, you know. Now, just everybody knows who you are. I mean, literally everybody knows who you are. But for the couple of people that are just kind of clicking on this on YouTube, tell me how and why you started Morph Market real quick.
So it was back in, I guess the short version is, it was back in 2014, and I got into reptiles, as many people. And as a kid, I had some reptiles, and so it was, some people are aware, I had a reticulated python that I had to get rid of. The parents made me let it go. And so it was a little bit of like in a midlife crisis, like I'm an adult now and I can have, realizing, oh, I can go get a reptile. And, but I did, my kids, we stopped at a reptile farm in Alabama, and my kids had a good time. It was a crocodile farm, sorry. And then they had some reptiles there, some snakes, and the kids kind of liked it. So got the first ball python, you know how it goes from there, started getting more. But as I got into the hobby, I just saw the lack of a marketplace, a modern marketplace for buying and selling of the reptiles. And I found it frustrating. The sites that existed then were just like forums out of the 1990s with no search capabilities at all, you know, and ads that had lots of items in them at once. And so you couldn't search even with keywords. You get all kinds of things back that weren't what you were looking for. Actually, the way Morph Market started was I was trying to write some machine learning or AI code to predict or understand the value of morphs. So if you put in like 3 genes, it could say, well, this is probably worth about such and such, because I didn't know. But I thought if I put enough data in, then I could have that kind of a tool. So that's where it started. And then I began to gather some data for that. And I guess somewhere in that process, I just thought, oh, I could maybe stand this up as a marketplace and other people could use it for buying and selling. So that was kind of the origin.
Right. So, and I know you don't want to name names, but these are, you know, like back in the king snake days and the Fauna Classified days, where you couldn't search for dog. Like you had to scroll down and go page by page to just look for something that you would want. And anytime somebody put a new ad on, the ads would actually bump down one. You know, so if it was busy one day, you would go back the next day and not even be able to find the ad that you saw the day before. You know,
exactly.
While
we have you know, we can kind of get into it in a little bit, but you know, there's a little bit of that effect on Morph Market. There are lots of ads, and they do eventually get renewed and bump to the front. But that behavior is very controlled, and part of that is because I wanted to make it easy. I didn't want breeders to have, or sellers to have to feel like every day they had to get on there and bump stuff.
Right.
You don't have time for that. So it's designed to not do that. It's designed, the fact that the fact that we're actually showing ads instead of just posts with stuff in them, ads that are very specific. The whole site's organized around ads, like any modern marketplace, Amazon, eBay, Etsy. They're just ads. And that allows for really detailed search, which means even if your ad is, you've got a pastel something, and so there's a lot of ads in that category, but users can filter down to a specific query that if what you were selling is what they want, they'll be able to find it even if there's a big stack of ads there.
Right. And yeah, and you couldn't do that back even 10 years ago, but people are also more advanced now, and they know to bookmark an ad if they, if they see something that they like. Now, are you still keeping snakes?
So we have some reptiles with some pets. I did sell off the collection that I'd started to build back in those early years. I did sell it just because I didn't have time to both run. I had to make a decision, and I decided to. I've got a family also. I had a day job at the time, and so Morph Market, started consuming time, and I had to let the collection go. But today we have a Dumerals boa, a bearded dragon. We have a dog. I have a rat. And apparently we have some hermit crabs now too. So there's a lot of animals here, but not a large reptile collection.
Now, when would you say Morph Market took off? I mean, not when you quit your day job, but when did it really take off? Because it was relatively quickly, I know, after I heard about it, that everybody was doing it.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'd have to go back, I guess, and look at data to figure that out. To see if there was a particular inflection point. I mean, I think it's been a slow, gradual build over the years. I think last year, obviously during the height of COVID, and everyone shifting, kind of changing their lifestyle, I think that was beneficial to Morph Market because people couldn't go to shows. And so, while a lot of people were already using Morph Market, I think there were probably some who maybe they used it to check prices, or maybe they even bought off it, but they didn't sell on it. And this forced them to, them needing other avenues to kind of whatever hesitations or roadblocks they had to wanting to use it. Maybe they just, maybe it was figuring out how to ship a live animal, for example. That's a little bit of a learning curve. You have to, spend an hour or two and read about that. I feel like last year probably a bunch of people got over that, and hopefully a lot of them enjoy using Morph Market. They see benefits to that, and will continue to do so.
Right. Now, what year did you actually say, all right, this is my full-time job now? I'm just taking the plunge.
That was last year. So yeah, it hasn't even been a full year. It was pretty much last summer.
And you did similar work as far as coding wise before Morph Market?
So my career has always been in software development for 20 years. So in that sense, yes, but I was more in the AI kind of space,
right?
Language processing, which had a slight overlap with some of the trait and gene processing that we do when we take a description of an ad and pull the traits out automatically. Right. Kind of a little bit of overlap there, but not that much.
Okay, now the majority of ads on Morph Market, what are they got to be ball pythons, right?
Right. So to date, as of today, we have the ads are about 60% ball pythons and 40% other. Okay. And that's been steadily growing. The other has been growing, and that's as much as ball pythons are the staple of Morph Market and probably the reptile industry. I would guess that based on just looking at shows as well, right? So that's a question I've had over the years. It's hard to know. Well, we started with ball pythons, so clearly they're going to have the lead in that way. But if you go to an expo, you're going to see, I think, the majority is ball pythons anyway. Right. At least that's those I've been to. So I think that at this point, so 60% ball pythons, 40% other, and the other would be some of the other top categories would be boa constrictors, reticulated pythons, crested geckos, leopard geckos. And then some of our other we have some categories that have a lot of species in them, like other lizards, other geckos, and those are actually really big as well. But those are multiple species. So we're actually going to be in the process of breaking more of those out, just like we promoted Burmese pythons this year so far, from other pythons up to its own category. But it's been great to see the other categories grow, and that's my goal, is to not to downplay ball pythons by any means, but to like promote all the species.
Right. There gotta be is the majority of the higher membership tiers ball pythons too, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's a whole process for doing sales. Now you have a bunch of different tiers on the site, basically, right?
Right.
You know, so you could put one picture on one tier. You could, a certain amount is up to a certain, selling amount on another tier. Now, out of, and this is not to kind of, I don't know how I want to phrase it, not to blow you up or anything, but what do you think is the tier that makes most sense for your average non-full-time breeder? Like, is it the top tier, or is it, maybe like a mid-level tier, because they don't need everything that the top tier people need?
Right. The way that tiers are structured is that, I mean, there is a free level, right, which lets you post a few ads. You could think of that as just trying the site out, or maybe you just, for whatever reason, you only have an animal or two, and that just works for you. So
Right.
there is a free level. But beyond that, you get into basic, which is the next step up, and that's only, that's not very expensive at all. That tier is designed to give you some of the core features of the site, and as well as more capacity to sell, so you can list more ads, right? When you jump to standard, you can, and each tier you go up, you get more capacity. But standard, we really add a lot of, you could think of more professional features into standard. So you're getting more capacity, but you're also getting a lot more features.
Right.
By the time you go up to the higher levels from there, it's more about the capacity, right? So I think standard is kind of the bang for the buck, I would say, I think is what you're kind of getting at.
Right.
I think you get the most features, but you're paying a little less. And so if the capacity of standard works for your volume, then that's a good place to be at. And if you want to sell more, there are some features, and you can see the features that are in the higher levels, and if those make sense to somebody, then they could upgrade for those reasons as well.
And the upgraded tiers are more like multiple pictures, no limit as far as sales numbers, videos, things like that. Now,
Right.
How much is you're hosting all those videos and all those pictures on your own servers?
Right. Well, we host them in the cloud.
Okay.
So, for example, we use Amazon to host most of the media.
Okay. Now, when somebody signs up to Morph Market, no matter what, like even with a basic membership, they'll get a store, right?
Right.
They'll get a store page. And talk to me a little bit about setting that store up, because a lot of people, especially if they're older, probably maybe the store setup would be a little bit more intimidating than for a 14-year-old kid that grew up on Instagram. Like if you're somebody like Ralph Davis and you were growing up by physically mailing list of your animals to people with no pictures or no anything, setting up a store on Morph Market would probably be a little bit more intimidating.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just really all someone needs to do is follow it's just a form that has a bunch of fields. I mean, it's like setting up your Facebook profile, really. There's just different fields, and you fill them in with the appropriate information. I would advise someone just spend a few minutes and look at some other stores. Look at Justin Kabilka, whoever the breeders are that you admire, you follow. Go see how they've done it and see how they're set up. But it kind of comes back to something you do in your 15 minutes of lame. The first question you ask everyone is like, what makes you different? So that's what you want to convey. And it's okay if you're not totally different, but you want to convey, this is your opportunity to stand out, from the other sellers, and at least set yourself up within the higher there's so many sellers on Morph Market that don't put any, they don't customize their profile at all. Right. And that doesn't look good. So, you've got, I would say there's two kind of important angles to setting up that profile. The first would be, you want to differentiate yourself. So there's one big form called about or field where you can just type in a few paragraphs to describe your business, talk about yourself, right? So that's one thing that's really important. And again, look at examples to see what other people have said there. Now, something lesser, you talk about, I'll mention maybe here and there some features that are available in different tiers, but there's a feature that will allow you to put a video on your store page. And I don't think a lot of people have done that, but that I can't think of, that feel to me is like one of the coolest features. I would love to see, not just someone write a few paragraphs about themselves, but hey, here's a video of you walking around your facility showing me how clean your racks are, how what your space is like, all that stuff. I mean, that's picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So video could be really useful. Earlier this year, we expanded the number of social fields, so you can have your Facebook, your Instagram, your YouTube, all those links. Put all that there because Morph Market can be like your homepage, and then from there, people can find, go on YouTube and see if you've done videos there, etc. Another thing would be another feature that's relatively new. We call testimonials, and so once you've gotten some ratings, and maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit, you can pick out some of those ratings that you really like and select them to be shown on your store profile. So this is where, some customer can be saying, this, Chris is fantastic, amazing customer service. And that's just embedded right there on your store page. That's really valuable. Another thing that's new that we've added, and the reason we've added these features because we understand we want to give the breeder all the tools that we can to help them. We can't make you stand out necessarily, but we want to give you the tools to make yourself stand out, right? So store badges is a new one that we just added this year. And there's, I think, about two dozen badges of different sorts that can help you stand out for different achievements, whether it's when you join Morph Market. There was the original badge was the founding member badge, right. But now we've got, maybe you weren't a founding member, maybe you came a year later. So we got like annual member, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Right. You can get those badges. You can get based on ratings. You've got, the ratings you're getting, the likes you're getting, the followers you're getting. Now we've got a US ARC badge. So if you're a member of US ARC, then you can have this badge that shows up that says, hey, I support US ARC.
Yeah, the US ARC badge is, I think, the important one. Now, just to kind of sidestep a little bit, what's your feelings on the whole, that there was a little bit of a movement a while back, especially when all this was going on in Texas. Your feeling on whether reptile people should only buy from US ARC members?
Ultimately, and because I even got pushback. I had at least one person say, well, I heard you're going to put a US ARC badge on Morph Market. I don't think that's right, for these reasons. I'm leaving the site now. So we definitely saw that. I think ultimately it's our job to just provide information to the buyer about the seller and largely like whatever the seller wants, or to help the seller sell themselves, right? So that's just, in my opinion, that's just one more thing that a seller can do to show that how they're involved in the community. I've not taken a stance, or Morph Market certainly doesn't take a stance on whether you should or shouldn't buy from someone, whether they support. I certainly would like them to support US ARC. We support US ARC, but we're not going to be banning people off that Morph Market support US ARC.
Yeah, you can't force people to be like, you, you're gone. You're not a
and
member.
People, and there are people out there. There's a lot of people who do and have supported US ARC, and maybe they do it sort of in the closet, like kind of in the dark, and they don't want people to see. They want to be humble and not let their right hand know what their left hand's doing. That kind of, that kind of thing. And I think that's great, but I actually think that it's more beneficial to publicly, in this case, I mean, I'm all about private giving and being modest and all that. But in this situation, I think when you give publicly to US ARC, it encourages other people to do that too. So there's like a compounding effect from your donation. I think this is the same thing here. It just, when people see that, all these breeders supporting US ARC, they're like, maybe I need to figure out what US ARC is, because it seems to be a big deal.
Right. Yeah. It promotes the conversation at the very minimum, so now you guys also have I think it's a tier where you could be on the homepage, on the Morph Market homepage.
Yes. Yep. So we've got so there's a store directory, and that's just basically this part of the site where you can search and browse all the stores on Morph Market. And it does require basic membership to be in the store directory. But once you are, and a new thing that we added a few months ago, we changed our search. So now when you are searching for, like, whether it's for an ad, the main search where you type in like jeans or whatever, however you're going to search for an ad, it also searches breeders too. So if you're in the store directory, and then once you've narrowed down enough, and it's cool because I know that store directory is used. I mean, I primarily think of the value that Morph Market delivers primarily in terms of helping people sell ads or sell their animals, right? But also there's a lot of benefit we provide beyond that in terms of, so for example, somebody, Kristen in RBC was telling me she uses the store directory to look up breeders to contact them for various things, administratively related to what she's doing. So people use Morph Market to find you, period. And whether you have ads up there or not. So being in the store directory is really good. You want people to find you when they're looking for you. As far as the homepage goes, yeah. So now we have our newer version of the homepage we take a sampling of stores from the store directory and display them there. And the other thing to know, to get, if you have a standard membership, make sure on your store profile there's two spots for logos, and the second one's a square logo. That's the one we show in the store directory. So if you're a standard, you can be in the front part of the store directory where we have all the logos and it looks really cool.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that. So make sure you've got that logo set up, and that's the same thing we would use when we display you on the homepage too.
Now, does Morph Market use cookies or anything like that?
We do.
Okay. Because I was going to say, what would be cool is if, somebody was searching leopard balls on Facebook or whatever, and then they go on the Morph Market and a leopard ball python comes up on the homepage, an ad for a leopard ball python would come up on the homepage, right? So,
yeah, for sure.
That would be kind of cool, because God knows Facebook does it with everything else, where you can't look up a pair of pants without getting 75 ads in your feed.
Right. It's like
a pair of pants.
You say something to your friend, and then later you're on your phone and it's like showing you ads, and you're like, was it listening to me? We do one thing we use cookies for. This is another thing we added just a few months ago. With our homepage redesign, we kind of collapsed down, instead of having like the long many pages of like thumbnails of all the categories, because there's so many now, we collapse it. And we provide better ways to jump to the categories that you want to navigate to. This is more of a buyer tip. But some people were upset because they use those categories. Now they got to expand. It's just like more clicks. So what we did is we use cookies to track. And so if you click on, say you always expand and then you go down to some category like turtles at the bottom. Well, we're tracking that you're clicking on that, and so we re-rank them. So then turtles will become the icon at the top
or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Now, obviously, and this is something that you think people would know, but I would imagine if you have, let's say, and I'm just going from the ads that we normally do on the podcast, you have 4,000 active listings, right? Out of those listings, what's your personal opinion on the percentage of pictures that are in those 4,000 listings?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, listings wise, we probably have like 30,000 listings overall.
Okay, 4,000 breeders, right?
Yeah, 4,000 breeders. Yeah. But no, I don't know about percentage. I don't know how I'd quantify that. But yeah, like you said, I mean, pictures, that's the first thing people are going to see. That probably determines whether they're going to click into your ad and get more information or not. So that's, I would definitely recommend people watch in the Leveling Up series, watch Brittany's video on how to take great photos, because that's a big deal.
The picture, I'm amazed when I still see pictures on Morph Market, on Facebook, on Instagram, and where you see these small pictures, like somebody's taken the photo with like a razor, like it's 1989 all over again. Now, in order to put multiple images on, you have to be at a certain tier level, right? And what level is that?
I think standard gives you 3 photos.
3, okay.
Yeah.
Because the pushback on one photo is that the breeder always has to take multiple photos anyway. And why not answer that question by just joining the standard one, as opposed to 3 different emails where you're sending images back and forth, just to try and persuade the buyer to, to kind of use you.
Right. It's kind of interesting as in terms of photo quality. I mean, you have some photos. So I was talking to my social media person who runs our feeds now, and maybe we could circle back this a little bit, but basically he's looking for high quality photos to post out to our feeds. Right. And he, a couple of tips that he had, he says in the ball pythons, he doesn't have a hard time finding good photos. And that's partly because there are so many ads to begin with. But a lot of the pictures he complains about, in particular in the geckos, are often the deli cup. It's maybe an amazing animal, but the background's not good, or the belly cup, or the angle. It's the overhead angle. Now the overhead angle, I think, maybe that's because that makes sense to me, because you really want the buyer to see the full animal and as much of the color and all the parts of it, right?
Right.
Maybe the most beautiful photo is more of a 3/4 view or something, but that wouldn't show all the everything that someone needs to see. And that's, I think, where multiple photos can really come in, because then you could have your main photo be something really cool looking, and then you've got the other photos to show, okay, here's the overhead view or whatever. The other thing I thought about was in defense of the gecko community, Brittany said that geckos are really hard to shoot photos of because they move. And so I thought, well, maybe that's why there's so many deli cup pictures of geckos, because they're going to scoot around. Yeah.
It's it's insane on how much some people have upped their photography game. And it seems like some people, it's almost like there's a rule that asks them for bad pictures, and it was like they're purposely trying to take bad pictures. But so many people up their game in the last 3 or 4 years. I could tell just from being on Morph Market. Now, what's an average price point on Morph Market, like with all the animals? Let's break it down. Like for ball pythons, what's an average sale on Morph Market? Like do paycheck snakes sell more? Do the expensive stuff sell more? What's the percentage wise as far as investment quality versus paycheck snakes?
Well, the median animal on Morph Market is about $300,
okay,
give or take. I think that ball pythons are right around that area too. The median is close to that. When you get into other, maybe surprisingly or not, ball pythons aren't the most expensive animal on average. One of the higher categories would be like green tree pythons, especially when you get the U.S. captive. The boas, the retics, some of those are on average a lot more expensive. And then you have a lot of the geckos would be some of the frequent postings we have. They're less expensive. And in terms of what's selling, I mean, I think it all sells. It's hard for us to know. Anyway, I haven't analyzed that a lot. We've looked at number of inquiries, and I think generally, the lower end animals get more inquiries. They get more interest. I've seen an interesting phenomenon where around $600 to $800, there's a little uptick in interest.
Okay.
And I wondered if that was related to like the stimulus check, or there's some kind of correlation there. It's always hard to tease out the why behind the numbers, but yeah,
that's interesting. I would have assumed that the average price of an animal there would be somewhere between $800 and $1,000, at least a ball python, because there's not that many lower end people, but $1,000 is still considered, I think, like a paycheck snake, these days. It's not an investment, even though it's a lot of money. You're not gonna buy $2,000 animals and make $1 million that year, so
right. No, there's plenty of several $100 animals, ball pythons. There's probably, in a way, there's probably well, when you take the median, it cuts off, it kind of disregards the outliers, right? The $50,000 snake. So that lowers it a little bit, but also on Morph Market, you're imagining you're shipping animals, you're paying $60 to ship the animal.
Right.
So that probably cuts out a lot of the low end too.
Now, what do you recommend? Like, and you don't have to name a name, but what does your perfect Morph Market guy look like?
Well, I already mentioned Justin.
Okay,
Since you're a Justin fanboy, so that's
yes.
a safe name to throw out there.
Yep.
You know, Justin is, I think I would definitely recommend looking at his setup, his store profile. I feel like he's savvy, obviously, and he, even though he has a great reputation, like he still uses every tip and trick, right, on Morph Market. He's got the video, he's gone out, I didn't mention earlier, but we have a Morph Market reptile community forums, right, which is a whole thing separate from Facebook, where you can avoid a lot of the Facebook drama, talk about reptiles, and he'll go out there and post there. And that's a feature, is when you post in our community, of course, Justin doesn't need to be known any better, but if you're not Justin, that's a place where you can post and people can see your name. And then on your profile, we'll show recent posts you've made. So it kind of shows how you're involved in the community a bit.
Right.
But, Justin, he'll ask me questions every now and then, but he's, so I beyond that, I don't know. I don't have any particular names I would drop.
Right. Well, what I'm asking is, like, he does the videos, right? He does the serial numbers as far as IDs go. Like he basically runs it correctly. He definitely puts up multiple pictures, and they're all great pictures of
right.
the animal that he puts
up. And multiple pictures do correlate to more inquiries.
Right.
Even though it's interesting, it's difficult to tease apart that causation and correlation. In other words, multiple pictures might be, if someone puts up multiple pictures, maybe they are just put their higher quality animal, their higher quality product, higher quality service, and they care more, and so they're taking multiple pictures. So there's other reasons why people would inquire more. However, multiple pictures also correspond to more expensive animals, which I would think in general means less inquiries. But we do find that when you have multiple pictures, you get more inquiry, 10% more inquiries.
Really? Okay. Yeah, 10% is a big number when you're trying to sell an expensive animal, Now, since we're talking about somebody like Justin, let's talk about the new bulk import feature, because that just seems like it'll save a ton of time, by getting things up there, and you're not sitting there individually popping up, an animal and a picture and all that. So tell me about that, and what's the difference between that and what you guys were using 6 months ago?
Right. So yeah, in general, if you want to create ads on Morph Market, you have kind of two paths. You can either create them one by one, or you can import them, bulk import. And that's something bulk import has existed since the very beginning. I always, I'm an efficiency guy. So it's always been, I've always wanted to try to figure out the easiest way for people to save time, especially if you've got dozens or hundreds of animals, right? So that's where bulk import has been around since 2015. And essentially it's where you can have a price list. So you have your one animal, or one ad essentially per line. You have your price list, and then you can just copy and paste it right in, and it creates the ads for you. And then you can drag and drop pictures. This is a tip. People don't know this, but on the inventory page, you can drag and drop, if you're on your computer, photos onto those rows on the inventory page. That's nice and quick. Import 2.0. So import 2.0, I could go into the technical details of what's kind of how it changed, but the important features, we just released this month, and it's a new format. And that format, some of the great things about it, it's number one, it supports all the categories. So if you've got several species, you can import them all at once. Before, you had to import each species one by one. So that's fixed. Also, we now have support. There's a lot of fields on the ad page. There's probably like 30. And the old import 1.0 supports about maybe half of them, and the new import supports them all. And that was a feature Justin actually asked for. It's like, hey man, because Justin is one of the hundreds of big breeders who use bulk import. That's how they can manage their inventory. And he's like, hey, can we import the description also? Because otherwise they have to go back and modify the ads one by one, add that description. So it does that, and occasionally we have, the other problem is sometimes, we have the Morph Market gene parser or trait parser. It makes mistakes. It's not perfect. So you always have to double check what, make sure things were imported properly, because it extracts all the genes from the titles, in what you're importing. The cool thing, the problem before was if it made a mistake, every time you would import, it would sort of, even if you went and fixed it, it would kind of revert and go back to the mistake again, the wrong gene or the wrong, whatever's wrong about it. So now with the new format, you can actually specify, if you need to override the traits and kind of just like spell it out more directly, you can do that and it'll take it. So so it's got so yeah, it's the new way. And the other cool feature we have coming in the next few months, I haven't figured out exactly what I want to call it yet, but let's call it automatic import or automatic import, sync. And the idea is that instead of you going every couple days and taking your price list and importing it into Morph Market to update your ads, every night Morph Market will go and pull that data from, if you have it in a Google Sheet or if you have it on your website, pull it and just update for you. And that's something that we have been doing for years, but only for a handful of breeders. And so it's going to be available to everybody.
Oh, okay. Now, how many, I think that nothing pisses off a prospective buyer than to inquire about an animal and then find out it's already been sold.
Right.
Because people aren't keeping up on their listings. So what would you say is does that happen a lot? Because from what I understand, it happens enough times where it would become a problem, and basically you want to pound in the seller's head that you have to update your inventory literally like as soon as you sell the animal. How hard is it to click a button, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think there's probably a big range of freshness in terms of how attentive breeders, sellers are to their ads. And I mean, it's kind of, it does take a minute, but I would certainly recommend that breeders keep their ads up to date, because when people inquire and then they find out it's sold, I mean, they get agitated and they may remember your name, and it just sort of creates a negative perspective,
right, exactly,
negativity that you don't want. So that's something that it's hard. Again, I haven't quantified that problem. We definitely get those complaints. I understand both sides. I get it, like breeders, and we tell the buyers like, hey, these guys aren't all full time. They've got other jobs and things going on. So it's like they're not updating their inventory every hour. But at some point I might put a metric, like it's like, how do you affect change like that in the marketplace? And the way that I like to do it is to surface a metric, just like like in the message system, like and that's more for catch, if there's like a severe problem, like a breeder is not responding at all, then we have a responsiveness rating, and it'll show that they're not being responsive. That way the seller can just say, or the buyer can save their time. So we probably need to have a freshness rating that we show to incentivize breeders to be up to date. But I don't think it's a huge problem, but it is really annoying when
I think
some buyers.
I think what would be great is if there was a buyer responsiveness too, because I hear from certain breeders, they'll message people 8 times back and forth, and then the person will just disappear.
Right.
Now, are you against that? Because that'll just put a bad, taste automatically, because so many people do that.
Yeah. No, that's a bigger concern to me than the inventory freshness. And maybe I just hear more about it, but definitely, ghosting is the term, right? Where you get an inquiry and then you respond, and then no one, the first thing I would say is like, okay, that's part of the business. Like some people say it's worse on other sites. Some people, you hear everyone has different experiences, right? But I would just start off with the assumption that that's going to happen a certain percentage of the time. Right. And part of that's because, we not only have, I would imagine the core reptile community is probably better about responding, following up. We bring a lot of buyers straight off, the web, who maybe it's their first time to buy an animal. They're not thinking about etiquette and stuff like that. Maybe they're younger. Who knows? Maybe their parents didn't raise them right. Who knows what their problem is? But you know, it's difficult to train them to do the right thing,
Right.
or to at least to be polite and follow up. But anyway, it's something that I care about, and it's something we're looking to improve. One thing, and you can already, sellers can already go and look on and see the buyer's profile. And so if they and it says how many inquiries they blasted out in the last, I think, day or like in 7 days. So you can see, because that's kind of what you'd like to know before you make a thoughtful reply. Did they just,
Right.
you know, inquire to like 20 or 30 other people? Now we do have rate limiting now. So there was a time when they could inquire to dozens of. Now after about 10, it puts a rate limit. It's like you need to wait a little bit. You need to slow down. So we're doing things like that, but there is some information there. We're gonna add more. We have a brand new messages system that hopefully will be out by the time Messenger, that will be out for on-site messages out by the time the video comes out. And it's like Facebook Messenger. You're gonna have messages on one side. If you're on desktop, you're gonna have your message in the middle, and then on the right side, maybe not the first version, but soon we're gonna have the user profile. And so it's going to be really convenient when you're like answering messages, you'll be able to see right there information about the user and decide if, you know, how much time you want to spend, or if you just want to decline, you say, okay, they just sent 15 inquiries today, I'm just going to decline the inquiry. But that's actually part of why we created store badges. It was initially, I was thinking about how to get, because the trick is, and this, I think this is what you were saying a minute ago, Chris, like, how do anything we put on the user profile is information that they could see too. So we don't want to say like, this person sucks, they just send messages and they never buy anything, because they're going to see that and be really upset, right? So the angle I'm trying to take is like, okay, how can I like give them badges for doing positive things? And like, if you've seen they've sent about, you know, basically give the seller enough information to read between the lines and see, okay, they've sent 100 inquiries and they've bought, you know, I think we're going to go ahead and put on there like how many transactions they've done too. That way, when you get because if I'm a seller, I want to know if this guy's bought a lot of stuff, then I really do want to be thoughtful and right. So I want to give that. So we're thinking a lot about that. And it's not something we have a lot of plans.
I already got it solved. You should have a wife badge, because the amount of emails that say, you know, after 8 emails, they say, okay, let me check with my wife.
Right.
And then you never hear from the person again. You know, you could give them a 10 out of 10 on the wife or a 3 out of 10 on the wife.
Yes.
And, you know, just go from there. So,
yep.
But I know that, you know, I was talking to a couple of people, and not that it was a main problem, but whenever we talk about how sales are going and, you know, that it's very, they always bring that up. They always bring up like, you know, 6 people ghosted me this month on this animal or whatever.
Right.
And I just wasted a bunch of time talking to them.
Right.
And
well, it's probably more, if there's a difference between they inquire once and then you reply and they reply again. And yeah, there's a long conversation. That's the one that's probably really painful. But yeah, hopefully with some of these badges to be able to see how many purchases they've made.
Right.
You know, that should give the seller a better idea of.
Would there be a way to show how many inquiries versus
yes,
how many actual
like a ratio
purchases they made? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that would answer a lot for a prospective, you know, seller to help them out. You know, as far as like, hey, this guy inquired about 30 animals, but you know, he bought 17 of them.
Right.
You know, so I think that would be a big help.
We really need we need to be able to detect. So when a sale occurs, this is a whole other topic about ratings, but as a seller, you want to go in and mark that item as sold to that user, because that's going to prompt them to leave a rating for you. And that's how you get a lot of ratings. You can also follow up after that, and some sellers follow up with a message, a real kind, nice message, gentle, not too pushy. Hey, you know, would love if you'd leave me a rating. That gives us knowledge that a sale has occurred. There's a few ways we can find it. That the buyer can initiate that as well. They can say they bought it. We need to re-gear the whole messages system to make that more clear. And I think our conversion in terms of getting that information would be better. And the reason I say all that is because if we can definitively know if a sale occurred, then we can know whether, okay, there was a 50 message conversation and a sale did not occur. But right now, we wouldn't be 100% sure. So we'd have to think about that, you know, to make sure we don't ding somebody for when there actually was a sale.
All right, cool. Now what's your recommendation about how much should you post at once? What time and day should you post more? I mean, does any of that really even come into play? Do you have like an algorithm like YouTube where the best time to post is here because more people see your ad, or is it just because it's actually a search quantified site? Does that not matter?
Yeah, I would say more the latter. And it's funny because I was watching the Miguel level up video the other day. And here's Miguel, who's an expert at social media, and he was saying, I don't have time to figure out the algorithm, so I just post, and he does
Right.
fine, right?
Mm.
And like I said earlier, that's my goal as well, is to have. Well, it's fun to be able to sit here with you, Chris, and give some tips and tricks, some secrets.
Mm.
If there's a lot of secrets, that means it's complicated to learn, and that means
Right.
people have to get right. So I want to keep it simple. So no, I don't think there's really, the website. If we look at analytics, it's and I'm in Central Time. The website has peak hours. It's peak hours between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Central Time. So just kind of during the day, and there's a little lull around dinner time, but by and large, it's pretty flat.
Mm.
So I would say anytime in there is probably when I would post, and I would just change it up and hit different times, because maybe people get on. I would imagine there's buyers who get on a certain time of the day every day and check, and so that way maybe you get in front of them with one of your ads. And the other thing is, I would spread it out. And so we do have, some people might, I think a lot of people know, but some people might not be familiar. We have an email that goes out every day called the Morph Report, and users subscribe to that so they can say, I'm interested in ball pythons or turtles or whatever they are, and they get a customized report with the activity in that area.
Right.
And the more that you spread your ads out across days, the more Morph Reports you'd show up in, right? Because if you put everything in one day, it's just going to be in that one day, but you can spread it out. So that would be a small benefit as well,
Okay.
to spreading things out.
All right. Now, when should you renew ads because they've kind of, aren't performing as well, or, and I would assume that any type of change that you do to the ad would automatically count as a renewal, right? So it would start it up over again.
Right. So renewals are the kind of the equivalent to what we would call bumping, back in the forum days.
Mhm.
And although I think back with bumping, I think in those forums you could do it frequently, whereas on Morph Market, renewals are fairly infrequent, and it depends on the tier you're in. So the higher tiers of membership let you renew more frequently,
Right.
and that does jump it to the ad to the front of certain searches. But it's not, like you said, it's not automatic. It's not triggered based on, you can go and modify your ad and that doesn't renew it. That's different.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you want to go into your inventory page, and on the left, there's a column with a little recycle kind of icon, a green recycle icon. And so if that icon is green, if it's gray, you can't renew it yet. It's not ready. But once it's green, you can renew it. Now, if you're in I believe it's the standard or the premium or higher levels, there's a feature called auto renewal. So you don't ever have to go and renew anything. It's going to just, when it can renew, it'll renew. It'll jump to the front. So you don't have to do anything. Now, what's interesting is I found over the years that there's some breeders didn't like that because they wanted more control over when they thought there was a strategic time to renew. And I can see that so here's a tip, because renewals, I believe, happen probably in the middle of the night for the United States. So yeah, I would say probably the optimal time to renew is during the day. And so now we have a new feature on the seller profile. You can disable automatic renewal if that's if you would be having that feature. And then you can then because breeders would say, hey, why can't I ever renew these ads? And the answer was they're getting automatically renewed for you.
Right.
So disable that, and then you can go control that by hand.
And can you schedule a renewal?
You can't schedule.
No. Okay.
That would be a nice feature, I guess.
Okay.
I'm not sure there's that much demand.
Right.
That, but at least you can control it now. And the other thing I would say about promoting ads is that now it's my job to promote your ads. It's like if you're at an expo, if I'm running the expo, my job is to bring the door, right, to bring the buyers. And so that's the way I see it at Morph Market too. Like my job is to bring buyers. So you don't really have to promote it other than having a professional presence on our site. That being said, there is a benefit to sharing your ads elsewhere and driving traffic to them. And one is because you can get more likes on your, you're going to get likes on your ads because people on Morph Market obviously are looking at it. But if you drive traffic, especially your fans there, and you get likes,
Right.
there we do have some badges associated with likes, so that could get you get some higher badges. And the other thing is, I mentioned our social media presence earlier. We do use likes as a metric for trending. When we're posting stuff into our social media, one of the ways it gets our attention is ads with more likes. So if you want a better chance to get into like on our Instagram or something, then that could help too.
Gotcha. I was just going to ask you, how would one get on your social feeds? Because I noticed a lot. You guys are doing a lot more of it these days. Promoting somebody, somebody's particular animal for sale or whatever. So
right.
And I noticed that every one of those images are high res, great images.
Yeah. Well, so prior to the fall, I would automatically post out ads, and I attempted to do it in a round robin fashion across membership plans that had that feature to promote you to social media. But what I found is, if we do 4 posts a day now, 365 days a year, okay, and that's like 1,500 posts. So even if we were completely fair, we wouldn't even have enough slots to post every member one time, every paying member.
Right.
So I had sort of a paradigm shift, and I thought, and besides, like we said, even if we did, a lot of those photos wouldn't be very good and they wouldn't get very many likes, right? So we took a different approach now, and the idea is that we're posting this stuff. It's no longer part of the membership plans. We might post anybody's stuff, but we're picking stuff that's the best eye candy, the most likely to trend in social media, because if it can generate interest there, it's going to elevate Morph Market, the name. It's going to drive people back to the site, and then that's going to benefit all the sellers. So even though you might see so-and-so, Ozzy's getting a lot of posts and it may not feel fair, just remember that, yeah, okay, that does help Ozzy. It is helping the people we're promoting, but it's more about getting more eyes at Morph Market, which includes, your stuff too.
Right. I was going to say, getting people to come to you is so much easier than, you going to where all of everything is. So now conflicts, you had a decent one this year. And I think that was literally the first one that I've ever seen this year, was the one guy who got a bad transaction and then did a YouTube video about it. So how did that get resolved? Because I'm sure a lot of people watching this already heard of that. And what was the basis for that? And what was the guy correct in asking you to actually handle the payment process as well?
Right. So I mean, there's always something going on. You know what I mean? In terms of, most of it doesn't go that public. Sometimes we do encourage people to use some of the FBI kind of forums if they really want to do, have a public discussion with the other party. I mean, we're working. I mean, I've got a team now that handles disputes between buyers and sellers, which, is not. I'm happy with the percentage of problems that we have, because you're always going to have problems.
Right.
But because there's so many transactions going on in Morph Market now, the volume is so big. There's just by law of numbers, like there's always a few things going on. As far as that particular situation, and I was gonna say also, another new thing we have an incident to streamline that process. We have an incident form now. So when people are like, hey, I bought something and they're not responding, or it's been this many weeks or whatever, we're like, hey, fill this form out, and we gather all that information at one time. We get a kind of take a report on it. So this is something we're very highly engaged with. In that particular situation, honestly, I can't remember the particulars that much. But as far as the way the seller, I think what happened is the buyer went out, it felt like he was getting ripped off, or he felt like he was getting ripped off. And so he made a video about it, and he had a clickbait title that said, I got ripped off on Morph Market.
Right.
And so, that's, we all know that's, he got him a lot of attention, but it really wasn't about Morph Market so much as that seller.
Right.
And we were already engaged in helping him resolve the dispute. And he was, to his credit, he was very apologetic about the fact that he had not intended to bring, problems, to hurt our reputation or anything. although that is kind of the effect of when you do something like that. But he was very happy with the way that we helped him. So, and I think that's probably true for most of the people that have problems there. We're actually going to come out with some documentation soon on a number of levels, a number of different topics. One of them is to better document and communicate how we handle disputes so that buyers and sellers will understand like what our role is and what it's not. The main thing we're focused on is, and if you're a seller and we contact you and say, hey, this buyer is reporting a problem, like don't freak out. We always hear all sides of the story. You have plenty of opportunity to share what's going on. Like it doesn't mean you're in trouble. It doesn't mean just because someone reported it first doesn't mean, we think you're the bad guy either.
Right.
We hear all kinds of stories, as you can imagine, and we're not gullible. And the main thing that we're doing is we are trying to enforce the terms of service, the terms and conditions that the buyer and seller have entered into. So we're just trying to keep people being, honest with what they committed to. That's something that actually, Chris, I wanted to mention earlier. We talked about the seller profile, right? So we were talking about how it's important to set up the seller profile to communicate all about you and why someone should trust you and all that. But the other part of it is terms and conditions, your policies. That's really important. So something else new that we've done is, okay, so just like a lot of sellers don't put anything in terms of their, to describe them or to like market themselves, a lot of them don't have any policies either.
Right.
And the problem that we would run into, because then when they do a transaction and in a case, there's always going to be some percentage of problems, even if it's not your fault, right? Some problem happens. And now you have the buyer and seller they had different expectations on what would happen in that scenario, right? Animals DOA or something like that, or it's sick a week later after the buyer got it. So it's really important to have policies or terms and conditions so that you've clearly communicated what will happen in different scenarios, and that way the buyer can evaluate. That's part of what they're buying. They're buying the service. They're buying whatever guarantees you're providing. So you want to state those. Now, the problem we have is lots of sellers don't have any policies at all. And then when we have to just arbitrate the situation, we kind of came down to like almost us having to enforce our opinion of what should happen. And we don't really want to do that. So we created what are called default store policies. And default policies means if you didn't say what would happen in a scenario, then we're going to go with the default, which is what we said.
Right.
And so we have that documented. And so we've communicated multiple times to all the sellers this year, hey, make sure you go out to your store profile, go read, if you don't have policies, go read our default policies and make sure you're speaking to each of those points so that, you can say, they've got to report a problem to me within this many hours, because we said 4 hours or something. But if you don't like that, say 8 hours or whatever it is, So that's a really important point. And that's in terms of defining your store as well as kind of setting yourself up for success when you get into if a dispute happens.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of the bigger guys' policies, just before we started talking, and I think like Bob Vu has a great policy. Justin has a great policy. I mean, these are all guys that have been through the ringer, and they know that at the end of the day, the ball python people are the lowest common denominator, right? So you really got to spell everything out. For them. I've had people, contact me a year and a half after they bought the animal and said, oh, the animal's not eating. And I'm like, you had the animal longer than I've had it. Like, what do you want me to do about it? Plus, you don't know how that person is keeping the animal, even if it's 4 months later. These are reptiles that could get sick, get infections within a month, So I think that's real important to make sure that everybody on Morph Market should have a policies page. But I think that your default policy page is probably a better idea, a good idea too, to kind of run for, because then at the very minimum, it's standardized, So now, does it default to your policies if the person doesn't enter anything into that field?
Yes.
Oh, it does.
And there aren't fields, that would be a fancier and a better way to set it up. If we decide there were 10 different scenarios, fields, and then you could override some and not the others. That's something we could do in the future. Right now, it's just a bulleted list or a numbered list of different policies. There's really not that many though. And so I would advise right now the best approach probably for a seller would be just to copy and paste the whole policy into their own policy section, copy our default policies over, and then just modify them how they want to.
Right.
That way,
Yeah.
also, if we change it, because we could change, we might decide, we haven't made any changes yet. We maybe made one change since we introduced it. We could change it later. So if you don't copy what we already have, we might change it later to something you don't like and you may not know. So it's kind of better to like lock it in with something that feels good to you.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, historically, like companies like PayPal and Square, they would side with the buyer. Do you find that you guys are sided with the buyer, or the buyer more than the seller?
That's an interesting question. I don't know what the stats on that. Now that we have that incident form system, we're collecting stats, so we'll be able to do more analysis over trends. I mean, it's certainly, I can say that the most incidents are reported by the buyer, right? Sellers are not usually, occasionally they report a problem, but not usually. But in terms of, I would like to say, I mean, we should not have a bias, right, for buyer or seller.
Right.
Ultimately, it's did the seller satisfy their commitment, and we're going to go from there.
Right. Okay.
And really not, and people sometimes are like, this is not, I don't think the audience here would think this, but in social media, someone might say, oh, Morph Market side with them because they're a member, they're paying money or whatever. It's like, no, we don't. We really don't have, we rarely have a bias even toward, the only bias I might have toward a member is in terms of, I might want my team to go a little extra beyond to give better customer service to somebody if you're supporting us with money, but we try to treat everybody equally, really at the end of the day.
Well, that's the one thing we didn't answer, kind of to backtrack a little bit, as far as you guys handling a payment gateway. I mean, that doesn't, I mean, that would be a whole nother business for you, right? It wouldn't even fit into this ecosystem, right? I mean, to do payments and accept payments and worry about that, the transactional part of it, that just seems like it would be something more akin to starting a whole new business part of that.
Right.
Like, you can't flip a switch and do that.
No, it's not easy. And the next level up would be if we did broker the transactions, like we introduced a buy it now button, right? But we would be using PayPal, or we'd be using some underlying payment gateway to do that. We wouldn't be writing our own, to actually, there could be services that provide an escrow-like feature. But if there's not, then we have to roll our own, and that is like a whole nother business. And I think it's a great idea. People just need to understand it's a whole nother business to get into. So, and so it's a great idea, and there's lots of great ideas. And we have, I tell people I have 500 to-dos right now for things to make Morph Market better. And when people make feature requests, probably what you're asking for is already on my list, but the more it gets asked for, the higher up the list I push it.
Of course.
So it doesn't hurt to ask for, sometimes people are apologetic when they ask for something. No, ask for it. Like, it doesn't, send it to support. We like that. It can help maybe like bump up the priority of that. But we have so many things to do within our core business right now that would be definitely further down the line.
Okay. Now, just kind of talk to me about communication mistakes between buyers and sellers, and what you've seen and what the buyers are doing wrong and what the sellers are doing wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, with communication, I would say just some tips would be, as a seller, most sellers understand, I think, that we have, users on our site, they see your ad and they're going to either directly contact you. Maybe they go to your profile, they find your social, they Facebook message you, right? Or they're going to send an inquiry through Morph Market. You want them to send an inquiry through Morph Market, really. And that's because that's going to allow you to get a rating off that if that results in a transaction.
Right.
Now, with the message going through Morph Market, you're going to get an email to your inbox, but that message will also be in our messenger on the site. Some users prefer email, but the problem with email is we can only provide so many features, and we really can't provide many features. We can give you a few links, but with the messenger, we're about, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to roll out a whole new messenger by the time the video is out, I hope. and it's going to become more and more efficient for sellers to manage their messages on our site. It's going to help them make sure they don't miss any messages. If we provide quick actions, so you can, like, one click decline an inquiry, or even block. I mean, if you're having a problem in communication, now we have a block feature, so that means they can't ever inquire to you again. So it's going to shut that down. That's something we needed to have for a long time. We finally have that feature. That's new. That gives us metrics too. What we don't do right now is, if we get a buyer who gets blocked by several people in a row, that needs to be flagged for the admins to look at, to see if they're causing, what's going on here. And there's like a consistent problem, because we don't like when buyers get in there and they annoy a bunch of sellers. That we consider that a problem. But there's limited, we have limited control over that too. If you have a problem with beyond just blocking a user, I mean, if someone gets abusive, okay, so this is a problem that happens. Remember, whether you consider yourself a business or not, you're a business. You got to be professional. You got to take the higher road. There are buyers out there who are just ugly. They're going to be insulting or whatever. And I just recommend you be professional. Just decline the inquiry, block them. If they're abusive in their language or whatever, you can report them to us, and we'll tell them. We usually give them one warning, and we'll ban them. So it takes two people to fight. Don't get in a fight. Chris, you wouldn't believe, but you would enjoy reading some of the back and forth, some of the fights that we've seen over the years. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I mean, again, it's not like that's the common thing. But when you have hundreds of thousands of conversations, like,
of course, it's gonna. I think it's unavoidable.
Don't get drawn into it.
Well, now you guys just released the app last week, right?
Right.
And how's that going for you?
It's going well. The app it's called a progressive web app. And so we have a demo video that maybe you'll include, but you can install it right up. If you're logged into the website, you should have an install button on the home page. Just click that. You're gonna basically, depending on if you're Android or Safari, what your platform is, the instructions are slightly different, but it'll take you 2 seconds to install it. And then you'll have the logo on your home screen. You can click to open Morph Market whenever you want to. You can have the full screen experience, not the browser bar and all that. It's a progressive web app. It's not a native app. That's why that's a technical detail. That's why you're not going to be going to the App Store. You don't need to go to the App Store to install it. But then progressive web apps are great because they combine benefits of the native app and web app, like a website. You kind of get the best of both, because it gives the phone some of the benefits I just mentioned. Plus you can do notifications. Plus you can do like native access to the camera. It gives us those kind of permissions. So
you could just take a picture now and upload it to the app, and it'll change it.
Right, which we haven't done yet, but that's kind of on our list. So we have a lot of. But the coolest thing about the app is it just provides better navigation. You've got the both at the top and the bottom. You have navigational bars that even when you're scrolling around, they're going to stay there, so you can. You can still access your search, or you've got a really cool browse to category that's just better than what we provide on the website. And then depending on what page you're on, the buttons in the bottom are going to change. They're contextual. So like if you're, there's some on the home page, there's one set of buttons, but if you're like on an ad page, it's now like and favorite and inquire and things like that. So it's just we're getting positive feedback. I think it's good.
That's awesome. Okay. Now, I'm not going to really keep you much longer, but give me the top 5 things that you got planned, for the coming months or the coming year. Well, like what are you guys going to be doing, into 2022?
Yeah. So some of the, as I mentioned, there's like 500 things. We had lots of projects, but some of the ones that are in the next few months, and therefore I feel more confident to like throw them out there, are I mentioned the auto import earlier. So for the higher tier plans, we're going to set it up so your inventory can just be imported every night. Again, I don't know exactly what I want to call that, but that's a feature that will be rolled out. Regions is something we want to get back to and work on more. We've got the US, the North America region, we've got Europe and South Africa, and we really want to break Canada out into its own region, and we want to break out the UK now that Brexit has happened, because it's difficult for them to ship animals back and forth. So it makes more sense to have them. So we're going to break it apart. But the reason I haven't done that yet is because right now we have a lot of sellers in those regions, whether it's Canada in particular, they're sellers or over in Europe too, probably. where they do a lot of exporting. And if because the regions are separate, it'll actually it'll sort of provide them a worse experience, because now their ads aren't going to show up in like the North American region if they're in Canada. So to address that, we're introducing a feature called cross-region advertising. So if you're a seller who can export, you should really like that, because this means your ads can start to show up in other regions. They can show up in Canada, can show up in UK, can show up in Europe. So that's something we're going to add. Then more stuff for the app. So we're gonna add notifications so that when you're in the app, well, you can get those native notifications to help, so you have more consistent, seamless communication with other users. And then we just want to continue to redesign the site too. We've done, you've seen the homepage is kind of been refreshed, and we've already got new designs for the store, the other core pages on the site, the store page, the ad page, and the index page. Those and the homepage are the most traffic pages on our site. And so we've got a whole fresh new feel for those. And the great thing is that improves the desktop users, the mobile site, the app. It'll all get better with those redesigns. So yeah, those are some of the things. There's more stuff. There's a much longer list, but beyond that, I'm not sure which things will go next. So I'm less inclined to commit.
Right. Now, how many people are working for Morph Market right now?
I would say, it's not full time, but up to 15 people.
Oh, yeah, that's
play different roles, part time.
Yeah, Jesus Christ,
not just me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, when it was you, how long did it take before you were like, I'm gonna need some help here?
It was tough. A year ago, it was a little over a year ago. It was just me. My wife helped a little bit with customer support. I really needed help with customer support because that just takes time. Mm-hmm. And I mean, our goal of our site is to be so easy to use, it just makes sense and you don't have to ask questions. And there's always room for us to take there, but there's inevitably, whether it's a dispute or whatever. So no, I really value our customer success staff. And the thing is, especially when I had another job and when I was doing that too, it just left me 0 hours to make the site better. Right. So now that I'm full-time and I have other people helping me, we're reinvesting a lot. We're able. That's why this year you're seeing all the new features.
Right, because you're not spending all your time on maintenance.
Right. So, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you tell me how people could get in touch with you?
Yeah. So if probably the best way to contact us, most people that want to get in touch with me probably have a question about the website or some kind of maybe they even have an incident they need feedback on. I would say go through Morph Market and just say help or contact us and go through that system. And if it's a message that needs to come to me, then it'll reach me. Our team is small. Right. In fact, I answer a lot of the help requests anyway, just because I jump over there and I see them and I just can't help myself.
Right.
But if you want to personally connect with me too, you can use Facebook. I'm on there, and just know that if you ask me a support question, I might just understand if I gently kind of direct you over to the support team. But we'll get your question answered for sure and get you helped.
And you're John Lehman on Facebook, right?
Right.
Okay, but you do have a Facebook Morph Market page as well.
Yes.
Morph Market on Instagram also.
Yep.
Now I know for a fact the answer to this question, but you don't got a TikTok, do you?
No.
Okay.
We would like to, honestly, with our, I've been discussing that with my social media guy, but we're not there yet.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, dude, thanks for taking like an hour and 20 minutes out of your day to spend time with me and answer questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This was nice because, like I said, I don't see you on a lot of podcasts or a lot of YouTube stuff, and I don't know if that's because you don't like it or you just don't have time for it, So, I appreciate you coming on with me. It is going to help out a lot of people. I do know that. So, and hopefully in the end it'll help you out because there'll be less questions for you and your team, So, yeah. But yeah, dude, thanks a lot for spending some time with me, man. And we'll get this up. I actually put a release date on one of the posts I did today. I think this will get released June 9th or 19th or something like that. Either way, I'll be back from Conroe. Are you going to Conroe this year?
I don't have plans to right now, but I would definitely like to make it to some of the herp shows.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd love to see you again because I'm going to Texas in June. So all right, brother. Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, John. Talk to you later, man.
All right. Bye.
I actually love talking to John, and honestly, we went on for about another hour after this video ended. So I just want to thank you guys for watching it. I want to thank John for coming on and agreeing to do this and talk about all the Morph Market best practices. Now, we're going to keep doing these leveling up videos whenever I meet somebody who I feel has something that could teach people about certain business aspects and actually have other younger breeders learn from it. So on the next episode, we're going to have Justin Kabilka, the big dog here, talking about business expansion. And on the following one, we're going to have JT from Reptichip, who is going to talk about building a business, losing it all, building it up again by himself, and making it bigger and better than it ever was. Did you ever think why Reptichip is what the pros like Miguel and Justin use? It's because the guy behind it not only built his own business from scratch, but he did it twice. We drop podcasts on the 1st and the 15th of every month, so if you can, check those out. Snakes and the Fatman on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts are found. We also do the open Zoom call every 2 weeks, but we're not going to be doing one next week because I'm going to be in Conroe, Texas, doing the Herp Show. So the next one is going to be on June 27th. If you don't have the link, just DM me on Facebook and Instagram and we'll get it over to you. Finally, if you're in a position to help the channel grow, visit us on Patreon at patreon.com/snakesandthefatman, where you will get exclusive stuff every month like videos, behind the scenes pictures, discounts on certain things, and all of that fun stuff. I'm heading out to Texas this week, but I will see you when we get back on one of the previously mentioned shows, podcasts, or Zoom calls. Thank you for sticking around, guys.
Living